Hello friends, how are you? I think you must have been fit and fine. And this is Parvesh Chaudhary. I again welcome to all of you once again on this learning platform. And today, as you can see on the screen, we are going to discuss about Caedmon and the life of Caedmon. Fine. And actually, the Caedmon was born in 7th century near about. So first of all, I humble request to all of you that please subscribe the channel. If you didn't subscribe my channel, so this is my humble request to all of you that please subscribe and share the channel. Right? Thank you. So let's move on the topic. As you can see on the screen, friends, today we are going to discuss about the Caedmon. Fine. So let's start the topic and just go ahead on the first slide over here. You can see on your computer screen here. The first of all, we'll go through the literature features, right? Let's see what happens as per this first paragraph. Let's go through the passage. As in the very first line here, this Caedmon is known as the Milton of Anglo-Saxon period. You know what it means? Actually, friends, Caedmon was called the Milton of Anglo-Saxon period. Fine. There was in the monastery of the Abbess Hilda, right? There was a monastery, of the Abbess Hilda, a brother distinguished by the grace of God, and for that he could make poems treating of goodness and religion. Actually, what happens here? This writer Caedmon was believed to have grace of God. For that, he could make poems and treated the goodness and religion in his poems. Fine. Whatever was translated to him, actually, whatever given to him, for he could not read. Actually, he was not able to read out. But, like for example, here, sacred scriptures, he shortly reproduced in poetic forms. What he did, he converted all these sacred scriptures into a poetic form of great sweetness and beauty. Fine. And none of all the English poets could equal him. Actually, here, no other English poets could equal to him, right? Can't find a place equal to him, right? For he learned nor the art of song from men and nor sang by the arts of men. What it means here, friends? Actually, the writer is saying that he learned not the art of song. He did not learn the art of song, and not he didn't nor he learned the art of singing, right? Rather did he receive all his poetry as a free gift. Rather this he received all his poetry as a free gift from God. Fine. And for this reason he did never compose poetry of a vain and worldly kind. What it means here? Actually, he didn't have interest in composing the poetry of a vain means futile, useless and worldly kind. The type of worldly kind of poetics, he had no interest, right, in these kind of poetries. Okay, fine. Let's move on the next passage here, friends. Until of mature age, he lived as a layman. Actually, up till the mature age, he lived as a layman. Layman means as a simple man, right? And had never learned any poetry. And he did not learn any poetry, right? Indeed, so ignorant of singing. Actually, he had no idea and no knowledge of singing. What was he that sometimes, actually, what happened once upon a time in his life at a feast? Here are the writings talking about an event here where it was the custom that for the pleasure of all each guest should sing in turn, right? Actually, there was a custom, convention, ritual, right? Like for the pleasure of all each guest, they should sing in turn, right? He would rise from the table. You know what happens then? He would rise from the table when he saw a harp, the harp. You know what harp coming to him and go ascend. Actually, what it means here, friends? Actually, when he saw the harp is coming to him, but actually he didn't know how to operate it, right? And then he felt ashamed, he felt embarrassed, right? And then he went home, right? Now it happened once that he did this thing at a certain festivity. Actually, it was happened like he did this thing at a certain occasion of festival, right? And went out to the stall, and then he went out to the stall to care for the horses, for his horses, right? This duty being assigned to him, this duty was given to him, right? For all that night, for all that complete night, as he slept at the usual time, and at usual time he slept, one stood, any one person stood by him, right? And saying, Caedmon, sing me something. Actually, any one person then came to him, and he urged him that please sing something for him. Then, but he replied that he cannot sing, right? And that's why I came from the feast, and that's why I came from the feast. Fine. But he who spoke unto him said again, but he again said to him, right, that please you will have to sing again. Then Caedmon finally answered that sing to me, and he said, what shall I sing? What shall I sing, right? And he said, sing the beginning of created things, right? I hope you must have been understanding here, friends. Thereupon Caedmon began to sing, and after that Caedmon began to sing verses, right? And that he never heard before of this import. Actually, the verses what he's saying at that point of time, he never heard before that, right? Now should we praise the power and wisdom of the Creator, right? Should we praise, should we admire the power of the and wisdom of the Creator, right? And the works of the Father, the ultimate Father, right? This is the sense, but not the form of the human. That he's saying while sleeping. Actually, this it was the sense, but not form of the. But actually, it was only a sense, right? But not actual form of the human. Human, what it means? Human, you can say a song which is sing for the praise of God, right? Devotional songs, right? That he's saying while sleeping. Fine. So here, this first paragraph completed, and it was the basic ideas, concepts of the literature features related to Caedmon, right? The ideology, basic ideology of the Caedmon. Fine. Let's move on the next slide over here. You can see on your computer screen, friends. And this is the paragraph. Let's go through the passage. And in the very first line here, when he awakened on the next morning, right, Caedmon remembered the words of Haman. Caedmon remembered the words of Haman which have been seen in the dream, right? Last night dream. Okay, which was seen in the last night dream, and added to them many more. Actually, he further added in them many more content. And in the morning, he went to the steward. Steward means manager of the monastery, right? Lands, fine. And showed him and presented him the gift he had received in sleep. The gift, whatever he had received in the dreams, right? The steward brought him to Hilda, and finally the steward brought him to Hilda, who made him repeat to the monks the hymn, and who made him again repeating the same words what he had from dreams to the monks, in front of the monks. The hymn, ultimately the hymn he had composed, right? And all agreed, and all the persons agreed that the grace of God was upon Caedmon. Fine. I hope you guys must have been understanding. To test him, they expounded to him a bit of scripture, and for the taking the taste of his abilities, right? They narrated to him a bit of scripture, actually some part of scripture, sacred scripture from the Latin, and bade him from the Latin language, right? And bade him, right, that if he could so, then in the exchanging, if they convert all this matter in the poetry, you know what happened? Then they will accept the ability what he had ultimately, right? He went away, right, humbly, and returned in the morning, and he went away at that point of time and returned back in the morning, on the next morning, right, next day, right, with an excellent poem. Fine. So thereupon Hilda received him and his family too into the monastery. Again, on the very next day, then Hilda finally and his family received into the monastery, made him one of the brethren, and given the title him. He was titled that the brethren. Brethren means the brother. The Catholic brother, in the sense, you can say they were having the same ideology and the same etiquette, so they accepted him as a brethren, right? And commanded that the whole course of Bible history be expounded to him. And what happened later, they decided that the whole course of Bible history be expounded to him, be narrated to him, and he in turn and exchangely he reflecting upon what he had heard, whatever he had heard, right? He transformed that into a most delightful poetry, right? Most beautiful poetry, and by echoing it, and again he echoing means he presented he presented again it back to the monks, in front of the monks, in more melodious sounds, in more sweetest sound, right? Made his teacher his listener. And what happened ultimately over here, whoever his were his listeners, they finally converted into the his whoever earlier were his teachers, they finally converted into his listeners. Fine. I hope you guys must have been understanding. And in all this, his aim was to turn men from wickedness and to help them to the love and practice of well doing. What ultimately the message was there, right? In all this, his poetry, the main aim was to turn men from wickedness to the generosity, right? The politeness, right? The civility, nobility, you can say, and to help them to the love and practice of well doing, right, for the humanity, right, for sake of the humanity, right? I hope you must have been understood, right? And I hope you must have understood this complete passage over here, friends. And let's move on the last passage of the Caedmon's works. And here the title you can see on the screen, Caedmon's works. Fine. So let's start. Actually, here we are going to look at Caedmon's works. Here, the very first line here: the greatest work attributed to the Caedmon is the so-called paraphrase. Here is the, you can see over here, paraphrase is in creature, created by Caedmon. Fine. It is the story of Genesis, Exodus, and a part of Daniel. Fine. Told in glowing poetic language with a power of insight and imagination, which often raises it from paraphrase into the realm of true poetry. What it means here, what actually the meaning of these lines, friends? Actually, he presented the true form of the poetry, right? From imagination to the true form, you can say, and the true definition of the poetry. Fine. Though we have badge assurance that Caedmon transformed the whole course of Bible history into most delightful poetry. What actually Caedmon did, he transformed the whole course of Bible history into the most delightful and most understandable poetry, right? No work known certainly to have been composed by him has come down to us. Actually, there is no work known certainly to have been composed by him. The whatever work he has composed, they knew all about that, right? And in the 17th century, this Anglo-Saxon paraphrase was discovered and attributed to Caedmon. Actually, what happened here, that in the time of 17th century, finally the English people find that this paraphrase, Anglo-Saxon time paraphrase, and they attributed to the Caedmon, right? And his name is still associated with it, actually, and still his name was associated with it. Fine. Though it is almost now certain that the paraphrase is the work of more than one writer, but here there is a controversy, you can say, raised that there must be more than one writers, okay, of this paraphrase. But you know what? Let's see on the next passage. Aside from the doubtful question of authorship, Actually, let's aside the doubtful question of the authorship. Even a casual reading of this poem brings us into the presence of a poet rude indeed. You what actually here the writer mentioning, writer saying over here that instead of rude, right? Instead of rude presence of the poetry, but there was a mixture of rude with genius, strongly suggestive, right? At times of the matchless Milton. Actually, there was a time when the Milton era was starting, right? Everybody wanted to listen the and wanted to read about the Milton, but at that point of time, Caedmon's works was highly suggestive. Genius was considered genius, strongly suggestive, right? The book opens with a hymn of praise. The book opens with a hymn of praise. Hymn means devotion song for the god, right? I have already told you. And then tells of the fall of Satan and his reveal angels from heaven. It is the same story, same background story, which is narrated in the Paradise Lost, which was written by Milton, right? So there are some similarity you can say over here, which is familiar to us in Milton's Paradise Lost. Here, now in the next line here, the writer is saying the same thing, and then follows the creation of the world, and the paraphrase begins to thrill with the old Anglo-Saxon love of nature. What actually here the paraphrase doing that it begins to thrill adventure with the world, old Anglo-Saxon love of nature. Fine, I hope you must have understood, guys. And let's see the very last passage of this lecture. The beside the paraphrase we have a few fragments of the same general character which are attributed to the school of Caedmon, right? What actually writer is saying here beside the paraphrase, they have some new fragments of the same general character, right? Let's see. The longest of these is Judith. One more creature is taken place over here. You can see over here this the Judith, right, in which the story of an apocryphal book, right? Apocryphal book of the Old Testament. Actually, there's a one more book, literature book, or you can say the in devotional like book, the Old Testament is done into the vigorous poetry, which is also written in the vigorous poetry, and it was written also in the vigorous poetry. Holofernes means you can say here sanctity, right? Sanctity is represented as a savage, you can say incivil, right? And cruel Viking, fine, revealing in his mid hole, which is revealed in his mid hole. Mid hole means grassland, right? And when the heroic Judith was a central, you can say central character of the story, cuts off his head with his own sword. He's talking about the villain of the story creature, right? The writers were talking about here, and throws it down before the warriors of her people. And then what they did, that throws it down before the warriors of her people. Actually, this line is narrating what actually the background of the main story of the creature, right? The writer was narrating over here. Rousing them to battle. Rousing means warming them to battle and victory. He warming his warriors that go to the battle and get victory, right? We reach perhaps the most dramatic and brilliant point of Anglo-Saxon literature. Here we perhaps reach the most dramatic and brilliant point of Anglo-Saxon literature, right? So guys, students, you must have enjoyed this little lecture, and I sincerely request to all of you, please subscribe the channel, and in the future as well we will be producing the same videos, knowledgeable videos for you guys, and keep watching the channels and keep supporting when you support us, that's we feel a great enthusiasm, and great motivation all the time, right? So we humble request to all of you, please keep supporting, keep watching the channel. We need your support regarding the future videos also, and this is our firm commitment, promise to all of you that we will produce the same videos in the future as well for you, right? So this is the time to say goodbye. Meet again in the in next video. Till then, thank you, bye, thank you so much.